Hi, listeners. This is Ed Walker from BlackHelicopterRadio.com. Just going to do a quick video here discussing two different points about the economy. First point I want to bring up is a lot of economists and people, whether they be in the Patriot movement, or the Truth movement, radio hosts, well, a large variety of people actually, from different, regardless of political ideologies. A lot of times, one thing a lot of people are saying, is that we're on the verge of this total economic collapse. And they've been saying this for a long time now. And it's not so much that, that they're wrong, because it does seem to be pointing to that. But they've been saying that for a long time now. I was listening to Hour of the Time, broadcast from in the 90s, and Bill Cooper was saying back then that we were on the verge of an economic collapse. And I was kind of thinking that it's like they've been saying that, and why hasn't it happened yet? Is it just that their time frame is wrong? That maybe they're thinking that, that it's just gonna be sooner than it really is. Maybe they're not really looking at it with a wide eye of history. In context, in a historical time frame, these things can take a lot longer than it seems. Because they're basing that, not off just throwing that out there. They're basing that off solid economic principles, and they have a reason to say that, and they have all these indicators. Look at people like Ron Paul or G. Edward Griffin's been talking about the Federal Reserve and things for decades now. A lot of these people, and it's like, so why hasn't it happened yet? So I got to thinking, I was thinking maybe the people within the conspiracy movement and the Fed movement, they do a great job of pointing out the we have the Federal Reserve, then there's the Bank of England, which is basically, these private organizations, having just huge amounts of control over the economy. So they do that, but I think sometimes even they, your average person within the conspiracy movement, or these people that are predicting collapses, sometimes I think even they are maybe underestimating even the power of these financial institutions. Because sometimes they'll still kind of throw out there that like, well, we don't know if they'll be able to maintain this. If like they'll say like basically the economic laws will overrule. It doesn't matter how much they try to bail out. Basically insinuating that that they might lose control and there'd be a collapse. But I'm thinking no, it's basically up. It's just such a phony economy that the Federal Reserve and the basically the world controller is a secret government, and the financial oligarchy just has dictatorial control over the economy, basically saying if they whatever they say goes. If they want just a slow dwindling recession of kind of like we're in now, just kind of decline, but nothing too crazy, not people out riding in the streets yet, but just definitely a very clear decline. They could have that go on for however long they want, or if they wanted, just a total collapse, or they could have a bank holiday and no one can get their money out of the banks, and then by the time the banks open, they'll be just the money will be completely devalued. It's just there's so much they could do. So, and I just think because people, they're always kind of making it seem like any day now, there's going to be, everything is going to hit the fan, and that could happen. And this is really just just a slightly different take on what people have been saying for years, been warning for years. All I'm trying to point out is maybe we're actually just underestimating the control of these, private financial institutions, and how they're just in bed with the governments and getting countries in debt, to private international bankers. It's absolutely amazing. You look at this whole thing that everyone's talking about, the QE2, they're calling it the 600 billion. And if you think about this ultimately comes down to basically one guy, Ben Bernanke. It comes down to him. I know he has, people working under him, but essentially, one guy in our country decides, that they're gonna, put 600 billion in to our economy. It's absolutely incredible to think of the power they have over the economy. And just like that quote I read yesterday from Rothschild, I care not who makes the laws. If I have control over the economy, it doesn't matter who makes the laws. I'm paraphrasing. So, it's just, that is so true, because, obviously, that's the lifeblood of a nation is the money. So, a few points on that, just, yeah, and then my second point, you probably noticed I had this article up here talking about austerity, the great global belt tightening. Okay, this is from CNNmoney.com. I read this today, and yeah, I mean, this is just talking about austerity. The thing that really stuck out to me though is a few months ago I read this article from Paul Joseph Watson, um, yeah, from PrisonPlanet.com, called "Austerity Fascism is Coming and It Will Be Brutal." And he's just talking about these austerities, talking about raising the retirement age, all things that they're trying to put into place to kind of, lower the debt, lower the deficit, and that'll ultimately just end up hurting, the people that either need social programs or Social Security or whatever it may be. And yeah, he called this out, saying that the austerity fascism is coming in June 8th of 2010. And then as I was reading this article today in CNNmoney.com, it was like reading the same article, except, I mean, obviously they're worded slightly differently. Paul Joseph Watson, he doesn't hold back, and he calls out the New World Order and bankers. But this is, I mean, essentially they're saying the same thing of how this austerity is coming and how it's gonna, cause, obviously, massive rage throughout the world, the global economy. And it's just so amazing to read through this article, okay? And it's talking about the retirement age and how on Wednesday, President Obama's Fiscal Commission recommended a number of moves to keep Social Security solvent, including raising the retirement age to 69 by 2075 and less generous annual cost of living benefit increases. So let's see. Yeah, this quote is amazing. "I think what happens over the next couple of years will be the Great Reset. Governments will have to change the contract they've taken on with their citizens." And it's just so crazy when you think about this. I mean, just to think about the Great Reset. It's just, that is talking about order out of chaos. They're talking about just bringing the system down so hard, and then to go to their new world order. And it's just getting right in your face. I mean, they're just calling it out here. They're telling people. It's just so amazing when you have these two articles. One comes from a very, well-known, quote, conspiracy theory, end quote, website, and then one comes from Communist News Network, and they're basically saying the same thing. So it's like, they really are, kind of showing their face through the mass media, and they're basically telling, the scum public, it's basically it's not going to be too good for you, for either people, that are near the age of retirement, or, well, I mean, it'll affect everyone, even if you're not near the age of retirement. If all these people aren't getting their Social Security, then they're not going to have money to shop at your business, and it's all linked. And then not only that, but it's all linked globally. We have this global economy, so they're bringing in this global economic crisis totally by design. And then who are they going to scapegoat? Because whoever they scapegoat, you can bet that the antidote to it will be their solution. So if they say it's all capitalism's fault, you can bet they're going to try to bring in just bring in more control, more socialism. And then also, if they just blame that there's no global financial regulation, they'll say, oh, well, we need some global governance. There are some major globalists, quotes of them calling for a global financial constitution, of the banks. I mean, when you read some of the old texts by people like Ralph Epperson and G. Edward Griffin, there's so much emphasis on these international bankers and the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England and central banks, orchestrating just this massive conspiracy. And this is really what we're seeing now. It's utterly amazing. And it's just so crazy when you see CNN and then, Prison Planet basically saying the same thing. One of the major differences, though, with the CNN article is it has all sorts of... It's basically it's almost like it's, trying to stir up this division between the young and the poor, and saying, oh man, there's going to be this huge burden on all of the young people to pay for these old retired people, to pay Social Security. It's just, they really are trying to start just massive riots and getting us to attack them, to tear down the system, to bring in their new world order. It's just getting so in your face, people. I mean, yeah, it's just getting harder to deny. Let me just go through a few of the points. They always talk about, the death of the dollar. If we do this, it'll hurt the dollar. And I say the only thing that's even keeping the dollar afloat at all is just the dollar is backed by just brute power. There's not any real economic laws keeping it's just the fact that America at this point is just, we're basically the police force of the world. It's just in power because we're America. They'll take our dollars. There's nothing much more behind it other than that. Um, let's see if there's anything else I can say about austerity. I mean, yeah, it's these private bankers are loaning to governments, and then once the debt gets out of control, they bring this austerity, and it's going to be ugly, people. And the CNN article, yeah, it has this whole kind of divide and conquer, between the old and the young, and talking about how these old are going to be so burdensome, and then you can kind of get into eugenics from there, talking about, oh, what are we going to do with all these old people? They're just taking money and they can't work. And yeah, but both the articles mention uprising rage, riots. So, man, people, these are just crazy times we live in when you can see CNN and Prison Planet, basically agreeing on some things, but they each have their own, kind of spin to it. And, of course, I'm not saying that in a negative way about the Paul Joseph Watson article. Everyone has their own biases and points they're trying to make, but obviously they have, different agendas, but it's all about the externalization of the hierarchy, the Illuminati showing their face, trying to get people to attack them, to bring down the system and then reign in their new world order out of chaos. I mean, it's just such incredible times we're living in. But yeah, that's my point for now, so we'll talk to you all later. Time now, and it's not so much that, that they're wrong, because it does seem to be pointing to that, but they've been saying that for a long time now. I was listening to Hour of the Time, broadcast from in the 90s, and Bill Cooper was saying back then that we were on the verge of an economic collapse, and he's saying that, not off just throwing that out there. I mean, they're basing that off solid economic principles, and they have a reason to say that, and they have all these indicators. Look at people like Ron Paul or G. Edward Griffin's been talking about the Federal Reserve and things for decades now. A lot of these people, and it's like, so why hasn't it happened yet? So I got to think. Hi, listeners. This is Ed Walker from BlackHelicopterRadio.com. Just going to do a quick video here discussing two different points about the economy. First point I want to bring up is a lot of economists and people. I was kind of thinking that it's like they've been saying that, and why hasn't it happened yet? Is it just that their time frame is wrong? That maybe they're thinking that, that it's just going to be sooner than it really is. Maybe they're not really looking at it with a wide eye of of history. In context, in a historical time frame, these things can take a lot longer than it seems, because I mean they're based, whether they be in the Patriot movement, or the Truth movement, radio hosts, well, a large variety of people actually, from different, regardless of political ideologies. A lot of times, one thing a lot of people are saying, is that we're on the verge of this total economic collapse. And they've been saying this for a long time.